Hi everybody, welcome to my first video. Pretty awkward, so please excuse me. Welcome. This is my new reading booktube channel. My name is Nell. I live in Hyogo, Japan with my husband, Tim, my two children, Everest and Yuli. Hi, welcome. Sorry if I say a lot. Okay, just trying to relax. Okay, so I decided that this will be my first video, just talking about what I read in September. And if there's anyone out there watching this channel, just let me know what other kinds of videos you want to see. But I thought this would be a good place to start, just to show you what kind of books I like to read. Just really quickly, I do like to read a lot of horror. I like to read fantasy, literary fiction, some romance here and there. I like to read a little bit of everything, pretty much. Yeah, so hi. I'll just get started and just talk about what I read. I read 14 books in the month of September, which is pretty good for me. I think I usually read about 10-ish on a regular month, so a little bit more than average. But let me just talk about it. I have little notes here so that I remember what's what. But I'll just go in chronological order. I feel like that's probably makes the most sense, but you can let me know if it's different, or if you want something else. So the first book I read was Hemlock and Silver by Kingfisher. I read a lot of 2025 releases this month, by the way. So Hemlock and Silver by Kingfisher. If you are not familiar with Kingfisher, I highly recommend. She is one of my favorite authors. I read pretty much just read everything from her. If she releases something, I read it. So this is a retelling of Snow White, but you follow a woman named Anya, and she is suddenly invited by the king, invited / coerced by the king to help him figure out what's wrong with his daughter Snow. And Snow seems to have symptoms of poisoning, and that's Anya's specialty. So he invites her over to the castle to see if she can figure out what is wrong with Snow. And as always, Kingfisher writes the best characters. I loved following Anya through this whole thing. I loved that it was a mystery, and it was kind of like not a locked room mystery, but you are kind of stuck in this castle for the entirety of the story. So she has to figure out who is poisoning Snow, what is poisoning Snow. And I enjoyed, as always, all the characters, all the relationships. There's a fun cat. And I love how the mystery unfolded and how this classic story was retold. I love Kingfisher's humor as well. So her humor, as always, was spot on. And I give this book 4.5 stars. The next book I read was The Bewitching by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This was okay. I feel like Silvia Moreno Garcia's books always are kind of okay for me. Either okay or like a little better than okay. This one was mostly okay. Hope that makes sense. You follow two women, and the two women, one Minerva is from the past, and then the main character, I believe is her name Alba, is in the present. And you follow their two POVs and then see how they are connected. But there's a lot of, obviously, witchy things going on. I did like Minerva's story a lot better than the current story. Minerva's it was more of a historical fiction, I guess. I'm more into historical fiction. I really enjoyed how that all played out. To me, it was a bit more spooky just because it was set in the past, I feel like. But the present day, there is a mystery going on. You follow, I'm just going to call her Alba. I don't remember the main character's name, but you follow Alba, where she is a university student trying to figure out her thesis, and she studies a certain author that also went to the same university as her, and she finds out about or wants to study a cold case where the author's friend, back when they were in college, disappeared. No one knew what happened to her, and she is given this opportunity by the author's friend to look through the author's diaries, and so she does that, tries to figure out the whole mystery. And I did like that part, but I don't know, it wasn't as spooky and like creepy as Minerva's bits, because Minerva, you follow her and there's like weird stuff going on. Her long lost uncle kind of comes home to the family after her father dies, and then weird stuff starts happening, and her uncle is super creepy, super gross, and I just enjoyed that a bit more. But I did give this book 3.5 stars. The next book I read was First Time Caller by B.K. Borison. This is my first B.K. Borison. I haven't read her other novels, but I did. This was like a good solid romance novel. You follow sorry, I don't remember the character's name, but you follow a girl who has been single. She's a single mom. She's been single for quite a while, and her daughter, unbeknownst to her daughter calls into a radio show to ask for love advice for her, and you follow the main character and the radio show host as they fall in love. And I thought it was really cozy, actually. I do really like the radio station vibes. Like, I felt like the whole thing was kind of like The Office, where you have all these cast of characters working together, and even though there's the two main characters, but all the side characters were still quite fun. They really added to the story in a really fun way, and it wrapped up pretty nicely. The beginning was quite slow, I would say, to me. Once the daughter called in, and then it was kind of like the beginnings, and the main character, ends up working for the radio show as well to find her, to find a date, essentially, through the radio program. But that whole bit between the beginning and the middle was quite slow. Once she started working at the radio show, and then the whole yearning stuff started happening, that was pretty good pacing, and then it just kind of rolled into the end. So I felt like the ending was just kind of quick and a bit like the third act conflict and the whole ending just kind of ended very quickly and abruptly to me. But yeah, I mean, it was good. Yeah, solid romance, light on the spice, which I like. I'm not too spicy, if that makes sense. So yeah, I gave this 3.25. The next book I read after that, my fourth book, was The Magician of Tiger Castle by Louis Sachar, and he, if you don't know, is the author of Holes. This is his first adult book, or a book for adults. It's not an adult book, if you know what I mean. But to me, it was kind of like an off-brand Princess Bride. So if you've read The Princess Bride, if you watched the movie, it has this sense of like humor and like cheekiness to it, and I feel like he put that in here, which is like good, but it reminded me of The Princess Bride, and it was not The Princess Bride, if you know what I mean. So if you like that kind of humor, it's pretty funny. And I do like how the narrator is he is the alchemist at Tiger Castle. It's set during like the medieval times, But he is talking about this whole story in the current day. So, like, in the 2000s. But he's talking about a current day, but it's about the medieval time. So you're just kind of like, why is that? Why is he still alive? Kind of thing, which I really enjoyed. And again, the humor was there. I just feel like I didn't really connect with the characters very well, to be honest, other than the alchemist. But the alchemist is a secondary character to the whole story. He is a side character that kind of helps the two main characters do their thing. It's kind of hard to explain unless I spoil it, and I don't really want to spoil it. So yeah, it was just because of that I didn't really connect with the characters very well as much as I liked, and so I was just kind of listening. I listened to this as an audiobook. I just listened to the story and didn't really, again, connect with anything. But it was a fun time. So it was just okay. So I gave this one 3.25 stars as well. Book number 5 was a graphic novel. It's Feeding Ghosts by Tessa. This is my first... Well, no, I've read other nonfiction graphic novels back when I was younger, but I haven't read a nonfiction graphic novel in quite a long time. This is a kind of a memoir of Tessa and her mom and her grandmother. Her mom and grandma. Her grandmother escaped communist China to Hong Kong, and her mother is... she is Hapa. Her father was, I want to say, Swedish, and her mother is Chinese. And so Tessa's mom grew up in Hong Kong as a Hapa girl, so it talks about that. And then Tessa, who grew up kind of in like a weird cultural rift where her mom didn't raise her Chinese, but also didn't raise her as American. And so you kind of follow these three women and how this trauma of war has been passed down through generations. And I thought it was really interesting. Her grandmother also is mentally ill, and so she talks about how that kind of the war and the traumas that her grandmother had gone through kind of affected her mentally. And yeah, I thought it was really interesting, and I thought it was a interesting, I don't want to say take because this is her life, but interesting perspective into the war and how it had affected her personally. I don't really rate nonfiction books, and especially memoirs, just because it's someone's life, obviously. So this is unrated, but I did really enjoy this, and I also really enjoyed this as a graphic novel form because I feel like she was really able to capture her feelings, and like the imagery of the illustrations really added into what she was trying to say, and how it showed how her mom felt and her grandma felt really well, and it really added to the story as well. So I enjoyed that. But yeah, non-rated, but enjoyed quite a lot. The next book was quite short. It was another graphic novel. It's called Fangs by Sarah Anderson, and this is kind of like little vignettes of life and love between a vampire and a werewolf. And no spice. It's just like wholesome and sweet. This reminded me a lot of this manga called Veil by Kotteri, which is one of my favorite mangas. And it's just like little bits, little slices of life between these two people and how they love each other. And it's just sweet and short and like a nice little palate cleanser. I gave this 4 stars. So I highly recommend it if you are interested in something that's that's kind of light and wholesome and just a sweet time. Fangs by Sarah Anderson. The next book I read, number 7, is The Possession of Alba Diaz by Isabel Canas. I've read a few other Isabel Canas' works as well. Again, I've never had like a 5-star read from her, but I do like to read whatever she puts out. It's always a good time. Possession of Alba Diaz is obviously about Alba, who gets possessed. This is during the times when America was, South America, Central America was taken over by Spain, and these are about silver mines, and Alba is from a well-to-do, well-respected silver mining family, so she's very rich, but she's adopted, and that's kind of just hung over her head for her life because she is of this rich, very privileged world, but she is also adopted, and she's a little darker than everybody else. She gets kind of weird looks from people. She's never really been fully accepted. So she decides to go back to this mine with her betrothed that she kind of blackmailed into being engaged to her, because they have kind of like a beneficial relationship where she gets her freedom and he gets his freedom, kind of thing. And especially during these times when women are expected to marry and expected to have children, she really doesn't want to do that. And so she goes back to these mines and she gets possessed, and you kind of follow that. I did enjoy the mines a lot. It's very spooky. I'm definitely like the stories of going deep into caverns and caves and that kind of claustrophobic stuff really creeped me out, so that was really fun. I also enjoyed how the plot is about how it's like old ways versus new religion. So like there is a conflict between the people native to the land of the mines versus the Catholic and Catholicism being put upon them. And I thought that was also really interesting, and how just because one is deemed magic and old is not, and witchcraft or whatever is not, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. And just because Catholicism is Catholicism doesn't mean that it's good, and how it can be corrupt as well. I thought that was a really interesting take on this, on an interesting background conflict behind Alba's possession as well. The ending was a bit not to my taste. I feel like the author really built up this really nice, really interesting story, spooky story about the possession and all that stuff. And again, like the background conflict of like old ways versus new ways. And then all of a sudden it just kind of steamrolled into this thing. And then she just kind of smashed the ending together and called it a day, kind of thing. I don't know, like it was a bit more fairy tale ending for me personally that I didn't really like. I feel like I would have wanted it to be a little bit more messier towards the end. It is messy, but not in the way that I liked it. And the very ending, like how the ending ends, it was not like the whole point of the book was like how, you know, things can be ambiguous, and that you shouldn't be taking you shouldn't be thinking about religion and these complex ideologies in like a dichotomy. Like there's nuances to this whole thing. But then the ending just kind of seemed like it didn't take that advice to heart, and just kind of ended with this weird fairy tale ending. I don't know. Anyways, I didn't really like the ending, so I gave this 3.75 stars because I did enjoy the majority of the book. I just really didn't like the ending. The next book I read was a manga. It's Venus in the Blind Spot by Junji Ito. This is a reread for me. Junji Ito is one of my favorite horror manga artists. I'm sure if you are into horror and manga, you've heard of him. So not much to talk about, but he is definitely a highly celebrated horror manga artist, and I gave this book 4.5 stars, I think, or 4.25. And it's just like an anthology of short stories, which I really love. The next book I listened to as an audiobook actually is called The Incurable Romantic and Other Tales of Madness and Desire by Frank Tallis. It is a nonfiction. Frank Tallis is a psychologist, I believe, and these are case studies of people who have different mental illnesses that has to do with love and romance. So like stalking and obsession, and like why people have these delusional thoughts, why love is so important to us as human beings. And I thought it was a really interesting deep dive into that topic. There are a lot of good references in this book as well, where I really like to just jot down different books and different people and ideas that come up in nonfiction books like this, and he had a lot of that, which I really appreciated. And also he also included some parts of his own life, which I enjoyed as well. I really like when authors kind of apply their lessons, I guess, their teachings into their own life or personally. And so he included that as well. I would have loved more, honestly. I feel like he kind of is more of like just a little dab here and there of his own life, and I would have wanted some more in-depth thoughts on it, but I did appreciate that he mentioned some events in his own life that had to do with these kinds of case studies and ideas. And he also was pretty funny. So I did like his writing style. So I do recommend it if you're into psychology and what that kind of like why is love so important to us kind of thing. I do highly recommend this book as well. After that, I read another 2025 release, The Original by Nell Stevens. I really enjoyed this. The main character, Grace, is not it's not written that she is outright autistic, but she is autistic coded, I would say. Victorian England. She's part of this wealthy family. She is adopted by her aunt and uncle who don't particularly like her. They just kind of had to because she's family. So she is kind of just looked down on her whole time. Her parents are both quite mentally ill. They are in like a sanatorium type of thing. So her aunt and uncle don't like her even more because of that, because they think she's really weird because she's autistic. And she realizes that she is really good at creating fake versions of famous paintings. So she is trying to sell her fakes in like the black market, essentially, to make enough money to escape her family and to kind of follow that. But also her cousin, who was thought to be shipwrecked and died at sea, announces that he's actually alive, and people in her family are torn on whether or not he is actually Charles or he's not actually Charles and he's a fraud. So this book makes a lot of points about whether or not fake items and fake things, like, is it the idea? If the idea is there and if it's like the original, is it bad or is it worth it? So I thought that was really interesting, and like what makes a fake so fake? Like if it makes you happy, is it bad, kind of thing? And I thought that was really interesting. And also the idea of hoarding wealth and about the immorality of hoarding wealth, and how making these fake paintings could be a way to circumvent the like the exclusivity that these paintings have, and that sharing it can be kind of like sharing the wealth, and maybe the discussion of how that could be beneficial to society, and how it's anti-capitalistic in a way, in a good way. That was really interesting. I really enjoyed the story for this one. Yeah, the pacing was really good. It was it's a bit slow going. It's definitely not like a fast-paced read. I would say that it's not even a medium-paced read. It's quite slow, and a lot of discussing rather than investigating. There are some investigations on whether or not Charles is actually Charles, but it's definitely more of like a character study rather than like a mystery, if that makes sense. So I enjoyed this. I gave this 4.5 stars. Number 11 is On the Calculation of Volume Number 1 by this author that I'll put on the screen. I really enjoyed this book. This is about Tara, and she is stuck on the day November 18th, and she has been living November 18th for a while. So she wakes up on the day of November 18th, goes to sleep, and she wakes up and the whole day starts over again. And even though it's like a time thing, it's definitely not a sci-fi thing. It's, again, more kind of like the original. It's more of a case study rather than or a character study rather than an action-y kind of thing. She doesn't do much to figure out how to get out of this time loop and figure out why she's in this time loop. She just kind of lives it, and for a bit she's kind of deals with it, essentially. She does experiment with it, and you kind of hear her talk about that, but other than that, she's just kind of dealing with it, essentially, and hoping for the best. But I really enjoyed how this kind of puts a character in this vacuum of like time, and you kind of see how someone deals with something like this. Like, how does one live if there is no time? Like, what do you do? And so you kind of study that, and one of the points that the book makes is how people are so small in the vastness of the universe. Like, compared to the universe, we are just these tiny little specks of dust, essentially floating in space. But also at the same time, we are so significant when we have these relationships with people, and like to the people around us, we can be so significant at the same time, and how that's a privilege. I found that really interesting because Tara, she's stuck in this time loop. She's essentially just kind of like taken out of the world. Essentially, like, people are living their life and acting like November 18th hasn't happened yet, but for her it's happened hundreds of times already. And so she's kind of on her own, essentially. Like, the relationships that she's had are not the same anymore. Like, the relationship to her husband is kind of just like detached, essentially, because he doesn't remember that. Every single time she has to explain to him that this is happening to her, and he doesn't remember that she's already told him a bajillion times. And one of the quotes that I really like that I wrote down is to show that is that in this unfathomable vastness, these infinitesimal elements are still able to hold themselves together, that we manage to stay afloat, that we exist at all, that each of us has come into being as only one of untold possibilities. The unthinkable is something we carry with us always. It has already happened. We are improbable. We have emerged from a cloud of unbelievable coincidences. And so, like, this, it's true that this, like, us existing in this world, we are so small in this unfathomable vastness of the universe, but also at the same time, she mentions that, you know, after living so many days of November 18th, she mentions, that's how little difference I make to the world, and that's how little the activities of one person matter on the 18th of November. And it's just like, it sounds so sad that's like, what's the point? But also at the same time, being able to see like who she is as a human being in this little day is super interesting, and I really loved that. So I gave this 5 stars because obviously I'm still talking about it. After that, number 12, I read A Drop of Corruption by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is the second book to the Shadow of the Leviathan series, which I am really enjoying. The first was The Tainted Cup, I believe. I really love the relationship between Anna and Din. Anna is this is a Sherlock and Watson kind of vibe. Anna is the Sherlock. She is super smart, super, like, I don't know, mentally adept at figuring out the answer to these mysteries that they come across. Din has so this is a fantasy mystery novel. So he has I forget what you call it, but the ability to remember everything, like with like photogenic memory, essentially. And so people have certain powers and certain abilities based off of different, what do you call it? Augmentations that they get, and that is his augmentation. And so he works with her to solve mysteries. And I just really love their vibe, like their relationship is so fun to watch. And this particular mystery is kind of a locked room mystery. A man disappears from a locked room and is found dead somewhere else, and they have to figure it out. So I really do love the mystery aspect to these books. And also, I feel like the author did a really good job at also kind of exploring government corruption and how, like, even the best well-intentioned people can become corrupt after a while, just due to their own pride and ignorance and power, essentially. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. This was a really fun time. I gave this one 4.25 stars. Can't really go into it, obviously, because then the mystery will be spoiled. But yeah, if you like Emily Wilde, if you like, who else? Veronica Speedwell, that kind of female-male friends kind of relationship, going off doing adventures together type of thing, I highly recommend these books as well. 13th thing I read was actually a short story. It's the Autobiography of a Traitor and a Half Savage by Alix E. Harrow. And I love Alix E. Harrow's writing as well. I read everything from them. And this is kind of based in colonial America, where Europeans have come and are trying to map out America. But it's magic. So America, the land itself, shifts and moves, and these Europeans cannot map it out without the help of the Native Americans, who are able to kind of calm down the land. And it's kind of about how these Native Americans, these map makers, Native American map makers, are also traitors to their people, but they're kind of forced to be because of the coercion of these European people coming in to make them do this. And even though what Alix E. Harrow does so well is to tell these short stories in such a powerful, quick way, but yeah, in a way where she sends this really deep message. and I really enjoy that part of it. So this is a short story, so I don't want to get too into it, but I really enjoyed the plot. It was fast-paced. I just read it in one sitting, and yeah, it was a really fun time, so I highly recommend. I gave this 4.25 stars. And the last book I read was another graphic novel by Ram V and Filipe Andrade. It's The Many Deaths of Laila Starr, and it is set in, I believe, India, and Death has been fired from her job because she finds out that a baby has been born, and in the future this baby will grow up to be a man who finds out how to immortalize people, essentially. So now she's out of a job, and now, since she's let go of her job, she is invited to go down to be a human being again. Or not again, but to be a human being, and she decides to figure out who this guy is, who's this baby, who's this kid, and to prevent him from finding out immortality so that she can have her job back, essentially. And so you follow her to do that, and I loved the illustrations on this. The illustrations were so beautiful. The theme behind this book was so also really beautiful, of how there is no life without death, and how death and life are something that is intertwined with each other. You can't have one without the other, and you can't live a full life without the prospect of having death at the end, kind of thing. And I think that was really lovely. It was told beautifully, and I really enjoyed this. I gave this 5 stars. So yeah, that is all my books. I hope I didn't go through it too quickly. Just let me know. Feel free to give me a bunch of feedback, because again, this is like my first booktube video. I do have another channel for knitting, so I'll put that in the link below. If you are a knitter, feel free to check that out, but I won't go into that too much, because this is hopefully going to be a booktube channel. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, if you've watched till the end. And please let me know if you've read any of these, and if you had some really good reads recently, please let me know. I'm always looking for book recommendations. But yeah, again, feedback more than welcome, because I'm not sure if I talk too much, talk too little, talk too fast, talk too slow, you know. So just let me know, and yeah, thanks for having me, I guess, and then I'll see you next time. Bye.